When it comes to Star Trek ships, there's a few classes that I really like, but that the community at large finds repulsive, sometimes for good reason. Whether or not the subject of today's video is an example of that, I'll leave up to you. We're talking about the Challenger. Sometimes also there are ships which I really deeply personally despise, but that a large percentage of the community really likes for some unknown reason, such as the Jaeger, which is an affront to the god of aesthetics and all good things, but I get it. Glasses are expensive and watching Star Trek is cheap. Anyway, we're not here to talk about people's poor taste and lackluster eyesight. We're here to talk about my poor taste and lackluster eyesight. And also, why the Challenger class is actually really neat and should get more appreciation and recognition from fans, rather than the heaving noises images of the class typically elicit. Before we get stuck into things, let's first just briefly cover what the Challenger is for the kids in the back, and how it fits into the Starfleet of the mid-24th century. If you've not yet cottoned on, this is the Challenger class, a light cruiser introduced in the 2350s, designed to replace the older ship classes which at the time were performing the role of fleet scout, screening unit, and large general-purpose ship. The class utilized similar components and technologies developed for the larger Galaxy class, leading to the smaller Challenger closely resembling the other ships produced during the era. With that out of the way, this is not a review, this is why I think it's cool. We're all on the same page regarding what the ship is in universe, and the role that it was designed to perform, so let's get into the biggest question people have when they see the ship, namely, why does it look like that? And honestly, I don't have a good in-universe answer for this question. My headcanon that the ship adopted such an unusual hull geometry in an attempt to derive greater energy efficiency and maneuverability at higher warp speeds. But within official canon, we really don't have all that much to go on. Star Trek canon really doesn't have all that much on this class, aside from it being a member of there being a member of the class present at Wolf 359. Outside of canon, though, we can safely infer much more about the ship's appearance. Namely, the Challenger class was designed to appear in the wreckage scene of the TNG episode's Best of Both Worlds. The ship was assembled from multiple model kits, utilizing saucer and nacelle components at different scales from Enterprise D model kits and several custom components. Most interestingly, to me at least, is that the finalized Challenger model used the sail from a Soviet Typhoon-class nuclear ballistic missile submarine as the nacelle strut supporting the upper nacelle. All of this was done to ensure that the ship looked visually distinct from Enterprise on screen, as the showrunners of The Next Generation seemed to think that fans saw a burned-out wreck that kinda looked like the Enterprise in a shot, and that they would assume that the ship had been destroyed off-screen and then get confused when the show kept going. Because, showrunners in the 90s were daft. I'm stealing that word from the British because I quite like it. It's fun to say. Thus, Challenger looks the way it does because it's made from bits and bobs and was supposed to look really different from Enterprise, whilst also sharing a lot of similar design language. A goal that I think the staff did with great success, given probably very short time and limited equipment. I think it looks neat. But even though I'm recording this video in the past, I can hear your dry heaving still. So now that the what and the why in both the real world and Trek universe are established, I think that I have to answer the question why I think the Challenger is underappreciated. And this is actually a fairly simple question to answer in comparison to the much more nuanced, why does it look like that? So to me, this is the answer to the question. Challenger is underappreciated because it's actually in-universe a fairly useful and well-designed vessel which accomplished a lot. She was designed to serve as a replacement for ships like Excelsior, which were quite old in performing the roles that she was intended to perform. And in their most recent refits, they were still capable despite their age, but, they were quite slow for the period and also wore out and cramped compared to newer ships. Challenger was meant to address many of these issues. She was brand new, she was much more comfortable, she had more modern crew spaces, updated technology, was roughly comparable to Excelsior in combat, and just not wore out. So, you know, she was better than Excelsior, even though they were roughly similar on paper. Within these confines of being a more modern Excelsior replacement, Challenger was excellent, being a capable, comfortable ship ideal for the long-range missions she performed for the first part of her life. Unfortunately, being a general-purpose light cruiser, the ship was only produced in somewhat small numbers, as the threats from the Borg, Klingon rearmament, reemergence of the Romulans, border conflicts with Cardassia, and the Dominion conflict all caused Starfleet to begin shifting its focus towards more combat-oriented vessels, to the detriment of the Challenger, which had production crawl to a halt after an initial production run of only a small number of vessels in the 2350s and 60s. So to kind of wrap things up, despite its brief period in production and low hull count, the fact is that Challenger was a capable, if somewhat unorthodox design, which was very much a product of its time. A time whose design principles and sensibilities were largely incompatible with the era which followed the class's conception and initial construction. But that doesn't mean that the ship isn't good. The ship was actually pretty good, despite it looking weird. It looking weird was not the reason why it wasn't built in larger numbers in universe. In universe, it was all of the other horrors beyond our comprehension. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Big thanks, as always, to the channel's patrons. You can find a link to that down below. Patrons are awesome. They get to watch videos early, and some other stuff that I'm getting better at. But yeah, also if you like the artwork that I've made for the Challenger, there's really not a lot of good Challenger art to go off of. So I've made some. You can find that on the channel's Patreon, and that is free and readily available to you if it's something that you want. So feel free to check that out as well. There's a link in the description. Aside from that, I'm going to keep this relatively short because I've got allergies coming on, and those are no fun. So I'm just going to say, hope you enjoyed the video. Have a nice day. Like, comment, subscribe, all of that stuff. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Bye.